Hey guys, if you don't know who I am, I'm Savia Rocks, and I help people tell their stories, stay inspired, and get educated as they find the pride of who they are within creativity, but most of all, without judgment. Join us as we talk about
You really want to leave a legacy, do something for mankind. Do something that's going to benefit not just your children, everyone else's children.
I think our job as humans is to become the person we were born and peel away the cultural stuff that was given to us, the trauma, like peel away the stuff that changed us or that was thrown on us or made us small or made us go off track.
The biggest thing I've always found is when people think they know so much, then they start knowing so little.
And I'm making the right choice, and I'm showing up for myself, and I'm showing up for what matters in life.
Sometimes I think that trauma doesn't always have to be a bad thing. I think trauma can help you make choices in your life that turn something that started bad into something beautiful. So guys, welcome to season 7 of the Us People podcast with Savia Rocks. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Us People podcast. I'm your host, Savia Rocks, and today I am abundantly humbled to have Dr. Dusan here. Now, we've been having a conversation even before the podcast has actually began. So this to me is exciting because the knowledge that he has is phenomenal, and I can feel the kindness and the genuineness of who he is as a person. So Dr. Dusan is a board certificate dermatologist and also a longevity physician, which when I was doing my research on medicine, there are so many different ways to understand what medicine does, why people actually do it, and why they decided to find a purpose within it. So Dr. Dusan, from me, before we even begin, I want to say thank you so much for taking your time to come on the Us People podcast. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for asking how I am. I'm doing fantastic. Anytime we can spread the message to more people and hopefully help them navigate the system of medicine, longevity, being healthy, makes me smile. And I can also tell that you're a very, very genuine person, that you're passionate about this. So to me, having, this platform of, two people just talking and seeing how we can make a world a better place is just music to my ears.
See, this is why I love doing this. It has a purpose for people. So my first question to you is, could you tell me about yourself, where you grew up, and the most beautiful thing is how you became to become the person who you are today?
Thank you for the platform. So born in the old Yugoslavia before the collapse of the whole communist regime there. And we grew up sort of what we thought in utopia. We really had, had the privilege of being able to beyond the Iron Curtain. And so Yugoslavia was sort of literally the crossroads of the West meets the East. So we had sort of the privilege of saying both. And we grew up oblivious. We literally grew up oblivious. We thought it was the best country in the world. It truly was. We didn't have needs. I don't know. I was a child, so I don't know how it was portrayed in either East or Western media. But generally, Yugoslavia was this utopia where everybody got along. It was the original multicultural country. And then just to see it all collapse as a 9-year-old and having to leave the country, fortunately, my father knew it was collapsing. He could see kind of the writing on the wall. But so it was kind of the best of times. It was the worst of times. And it sort of leads me sort of in a way that my health journey developed, because I was born in Belgrade, the capital city. But I spent my summers in Croatia, and lots of sun. People thought the sun was the best thing for you back then. We didn't have sunscreen in the 70s and in the 80s. And I just spent my summers just getting baked, my blistering sunburns. My parents thought you're going to have the best skin ever. You're building calluses. That was the thought back then. You're building calluses. Yeah. You're going to have the healthiest skin. And then when I eventually got into medical school and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm a ticking time bomb. This is going to get me. So then you kind of go into a full, okay, how do I prevent, how to reverse? The story was always, well, you can't reverse this, it's permanent. And then to get a skin cancer, you kind of feel hopeless, you know? And then the journey got switched from, okay, I'm a doc. First I was a kid growing up, then I became a doctor, then I became a patient. And then it's like, well, how do I use my knowledge to maybe truly target what they said is not possible to reverse that damage? And so it's been a journey ever since. And luckily we've had some research both from my own place and from other clinics to show that, hey, yeah, we can reverse it. We just have to spend some time, energy, and effort and actually tackle the problem we're looking at.
See, I like the way you think, because it also takes optimism as well. I know there is a lot of research. I know there is a lot of education within it, but there's also having this belief in yourself that you know you can also change things. And that's one of the things that drive people to do exactly what you do. I remember you saying to me that even before we started the podcast, and I would like to kind of touch on it because I think it's really important for people, is that your mom didn't necessarily want you to become a doctor. Now, there are millions of parents in the world who always turn around and say, I want my child to be a doctor or a lawyer or one of those things. But your mother saw the opposite for some reason. I kind of want to touch on it because it's interesting. I thought it was beautifully interesting. Please share us why.
Yeah, it all stems down from her experience with the medical system. And the system, like any system, can be very daunting. It's not very personalized. And especially in the 70s when her mom got diagnosed with a stage 4 kidney cancer, you know, and so she was right away, you know, she didn't know. It's one of those things with terminal cancer, you're fine. And then the next day you sort of wake up and you're not yourself, you're pissing blood. And so she takes her to the hospital. And of course you think, okay, this is just going to be something quick. She was fine the day before. She's going to be okay. Maybe it's just an infection. To then, do the investigations and they go, oh, she's got, kidney cancer. There's nothing we can do. Medicine doesn't have anything. Sorry, you got maybe a month left, right? So my mom was 22, I believe, at the time, and she was, of course, shocked. She was actually in medical school, right? And so when that happened, and she went on the ward, she was in the ICU with her mom eventually, and the doctors would come, and my mom, she, you don't give up hope as a human. So every time the doctors would come, she would see them as this beacon of hope, and every time they came in the clinic, they would say, or at the ICU to visit her on the ward, they would say, well, there's nothing much we can do, as you are in the ICU, especially back then in communist Yugoslavia. They were like, okay, how much is she peeing? Is she alive? Is she eating? Is she not? Okay, bye. And then it was left to the nurse to translate for my mom, like, look, they care. They might look like they don't care, but they're just busy. So having that translation, and from the very first day I was born, my mom just kept saying that, in her mind, because like they couldn't do anything for her mom, that physicians were generally, callous people. And she actually dropped out of med school and became a nurse because she had this wonderful experience with nurses who took care of her mom, brought her pillows. So she associated care with just people talking to her, people being open with her. And doctors were just like, well, one, they have no solutions. Two, they think they're smarter than they are. They can't actually cure my mom. And three, they spend 3 minutes and they're gone. And all they care about is, whether she, what her vitals are, if she had like her ins and outs were. And they didn't seem to care, right? So it was growing up with that. And then again, I was unfortunate at age 13, my mom had a massive heart attack. She had a massive arrhythmia. And I remember it vividly. I was, playing basketball. I was expecting my dad to pick me up. There's no dad, it's like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. I'm like, where's dad? This was before cell phones. And eventually, I forget somehow, like I found out that I think he called the office and he called my coach and he said, he's got to come down to the hospital. I'm on the phone, they're just like a school phone. He's like, well, you got to find your way to the hospital, take a bus. I'm a 13-year-old. I mean, fortunately, our society was pretty nice back then, in the 90s. And so I'm taking the bus. I get there. My mom's, strapped in, monitors everywhere. And again, you feel the weight of the institution. And I mean, my perception was different. I knew the doctors and nurses were really trying to save her, and they did, and they thankfully did. But again, you feel that just the institution, it's very institutionalized. Everything's protocolized. It doesn't feel like, you don't feel like a person, you feel like a number. So even though I knew they were there and trying to help her, and they were wonderful, my experience wasn't that. you just kind of feel that humanity, the fragileness of being human, and then so that's what inspired me to like, okay, I have to learn, I have to find out more. How do I protect myself? How do I protect my family? How do I protect others like me so that they can minimize this feeling, And so for the longest time, I also didn't want to become a doctor. I went into becoming I wanted to do my PhD. So I did my PhD. I figured I would, learn and help most people that way. And then life has a funny way of being ironic and funny at the same time. I finished my PhD. I was supposed to start my postdoctoral fellowship with Dr. Ralph Steinman. He's like the godfather of immunology. He's one of the most respected, most accomplished immunologists of our time, probably going to win the Nobel Prize at some point. And he accepted me to his clinic. And then out of nowhere, he just stopped responding to me. Oh. And I'm like, okay, I got to get a US visa. What's happening? What do I do? Like, I'm a Canadian. How do I go to Rockefeller University to train with you? And there's nothing. And then I called his office, like his secretary, and she said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, you're not alone. Dr. Steinman is in the ICU. He's got stage 4 pancreatic cancer. So again, my life was sort of, just like similarly to my mom, similar age, I think I was also like 22 at the time. And it's like, what? I thought I had my life planned. I was going to be this, PhD researcher. And actually, no, I was older. I think it was 30 because it was after my PhD. And but I was, okay, what do I do now? And I sat down, I thought, what are my options? And something spoke to me of like, well, let's just apply to just a couple of med schools. Everybody thought I was crazy. They're like, you got to apply everywhere because like the odds are so low. And I'm like, listen, I'll leave it up to God, nature, spirit, universe, whoever. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. I'll apply. And thankfully, I got into Western Ontario University, and then the rest is history.
See, that's a journey within itself. That's a story and a journey within itself. And I know there's so much more to it. And it's funny how we break it down into a snippet so people can understand it. But in between that's most probably years of your emotions stretched. Guaranteed.
Absolutely. I mean, we're all human, and I love that you say years of emotion stretched. And, I'm a big believer of, one is you can't change the universe, your path is your path. Yeah. But two, you also kind of can, yes, the path gives you, certain, but I do think you have certain forks in the road where you can make a decision one way or another. So you sort of have some options. But the goal is like you have to keep pressing on. You can't give up, and you have to kind of go where the flow is in a way. I don't know. It sounds a little bit. I like that the flow of the energy, the universe. That's always spoken to me. I mean, growing up, sort of in the Eastern Bloc, where that was sort of the mantra. Is like, okay, you have the Eastern medicine in a way. So not losing the sight of nature, but at the same time, I'm at my core a scientist, so I need to explain things as well. Yeah. But just having that journey, I find it very much helps me cope, helps me move forward, and helps me say that, hey, listen, today is today. This feeling is just for now. The only way out of it is to figure out a better way, and that's kind of the driving factor.
This is what I like. So my next question for you is, can you define yourself as a person, but also who do you see when you look in the mirror? This is one of my favorite questions. But on the flip side of that question, has there ever been a time where you have looked in the mirror and not recognized the person staring back at you? How did you manage to say to yourself, okay, this is the person that I don't necessarily see the vision of, to becoming a person that now you feel has purpose, understanding, and the passion and love for what they do, or even just within themselves?
No, this is an amazing question. To give it much thought, who am I as a person? I mean, I'll tell you, I like the second part of that question of like, when do you see yourself in the mirror and you didn't like what you see? I mean, the main thing was growing up, just before becoming a teenager, I was very, very emotional. Anything, it didn't take much to make me cry, and that part I didn't like. I'm like, why? What? Okay, there's emotion, there's the human element of it, but okay, at the source of it, me crying about it doesn't change the situation. the emotional aspect, the energy, the negative energy just fuels towards negative energy.
That's
so
true.
how can I flip it? And how can I see, the positive in the negativity?
Mm-hmm.
And why don't, instead of choosing to, hang on to the negative aspect, I want to choose to hang on to the silver lining of the cloud. So that was like, when I first heard that as a child, like, oh, look at the silver lining, it's kind of that, what do you mean? But it's raining outside. And then you start thinking like, well, what's, you kind of start thinking about, well, what's positive about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, one, you need rain for flowers to grow, as cliche as that sounds.
Yep.
And it's same for me, like really what defines me as a person is I see everything that's potentially negative, not necessarily as a loss, not necessarily as a permanent thing, but you know what? It's there to make you stronger, just like exercise. I don't think I love exercise. I mean, I did judo, I did basketball, I did rowing very competitively. Not competitively enough to be a professional at it, but enough that I know what it takes to be a professional.
Yes.
And any of that, there's nobody, like, no matter what they tell you, there's nobody at the core that loves high level exercise. It's painful, it's torture, it's in many ways it's horrible. You're pushing yourself beyond your limits. But to me, it's a metaphor, for life in general. Like, yeah, life's gonna throw hard things your way, but it's how you respond to that.
That's
do you take it and you see it lying down and you cry about it, which is what I did, before age sort of 13. And then just waking up one day and saying like, no, this is not it. Like, this doesn't help.
Yes.
How else can I do this? So that's, at the core of, like, if you strip away the titles, the degrees, like the stuff I do on a professional level, it's really just like trying to be as resilient as possible and not letting the negative energy take you out of it.
Yeah.
And then also, like, again, I said, like, I'm very spiritual. Like, I hate to say religious because, it's a man-made construct. So to me, I'm like, well, how are you as another human understanding, spirituality better than anybody else? And even if you do, okay, so let's say you're Christian, you're, Muslim, you're the other person follows Judaism, another person's Buddhist. So what, is one of them wrong?
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, it's really taking, I think any element of any religion, any spirituality is going to have elements that are common to all of us as a religion. Just be a nice person, be a kind person, do unto others as you would to yourself.
Yep.
And then there's going to be elements that are maybe just a construct that helps that particular society understand it, because we all have different experiences, different, past, different imprinting things that happen to us culturally that we understand just as a culture. That's what brings us together as a people, as a nation, as a tribe, whatever you want to call it. But we all go through that, and it's how you choose to see that negativity. Do you sort of suppress it and then you say, okay, I want to attack this other tribe? Or do you say, no, listen, we got to rise above it. We're all in this together. So that's genuinely how I choose to see myself. And then all the negativity, I'm like, another saying sort of that you can see in many religions is like, hear no evil, see no evil. And to me, that means is just any frequency and vibration, any music, if it sounds, grating to my ears, I just want to do everything I can to avoid it. And then things that are positive, that are fueling me, I'm going to try and accept much of that as possible.
See, this is why I like to be able to break down the different things between positivity and negativity. And it also comes, I always say this, everything in your life comes down to a choice that you decide to make. So it's, you either go with the hand where it's negative and there's pessimism and so on and so forth, and then there's optimism, there's kindness, there's love. And although there's a reality within all those things, you choose to decide which one you want to fulfill within yourself. And that's why I love doing this. So my next question I want to ask you comes down into the field of what your purpose is within your work. So medicine, we all have this perception of what medicine is, why people go into medicine, the field of medicine. It can be massively political, we can be here for hours talking about it, but the one thing I do like doing to people is helping to educate them. And that's in a positive way of being able to educate them, is to take their mind from wherever it sits in the world of medicine and whatever has happened to them with the realities of medicine, and find someone as beautiful as yourself to say, I studied medicine because this, and this. Obviously, we know some of the experiences that you have had. But I also would like to ask you, how do you feel from the time that you studied medicine to now that you feel it has evolved and the way that people practice it?
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about the paternalistic approach that was sort of thought of as, many, many years ago, where you come in as a patient and I'm your doctor and I say, no, almost like gospel, it's like almost as like, in a way, like a priest, would say, well, this is what, God wants and this is what you have to do. And if you don't do that, then too bad, right? Whereas we've now really changed over to, more of a consultation and seeing what your goals and needs are, where it's really, a partnership between the doctor and the patient. We definitely try that. The issue always becomes time, so I, as a doctor, like, especially in Canada, I mean, I literally see 100 patients a day. And so the point is, how do you take that and still make it so that they feel seen, they feel heard? It's very difficult. But there are strategies, something just to take people off of ease, is I always sit down. Anytime I'm in, I don't want them to be like, okay, the doctor seems rushed. And one of the simplest things you can do, it takes like less than a second anyway, that doesn't add to it, is just sitting down, and letting them tell their story, right? Rather than saying like, here's a script. Because I think if you go too scriptic, patients, people, forget patients, people, feel like, well, are you really listening to me? So I always like them to tell their own story. It's not just me. I mean, this is generally the training now. The problem is you always sort of get diluted from, what's trained in medical school to when you see the realities of medicine,
Exactly.
People, they're there. Everybody's there. They don't have answers. They think you're hiding something from them. They hear social media where everybody's selling them something, but they're selling it in a way that like speaks to them. They know what the doctors don't have time. So they come on their social media platforms and they're like, oh, the doctor's not listening to you. And they're in bed with big pharma and they want to take your money and they're not listening to you. They just want to put you on meds. They don't want to cure you. And so you're also fighting with that, and then you have limited time to engage with the patient. And so what I found was, it doesn't have to be me. So we're so fortunate to have amazing nurses, physician assistants, medical assistants. So for me, it was really building a system that, where I come in with the nurse and we spend time. And sometimes I'll tell the patient, like, look, I'd love to help more. This is a complex thing. We're not going to solve it in a day. I've given the diagnosis, I've given the plan. My nurse is fantastic. Her role is to really take you through it. I wish I had more time. I really do. But she's fantastic. Once I give the diagnosis, that's my big job, is like what I'm specializing at is the diagnosis. What she specializes is education. The nurses are amazing at being caring people. So take all of the time you need, because my nurse is not bound by schedules. I am a little bit. I have to stick to that schedule. Unfortunately, we're underserviced. We're rationed. And that's sadly what people don't realize. A lot of medicine is truly rationed because there's not enough of me. I wish I could clone myself and other doctors and other physicians. But we have what we call an allied health team. And I think what's really changed because of social media, because of information, is that now we're telling all the same message. And it really was music to my ears, because before we had, like, let's say, other specialties, like let's say naturopathic, allopathic medicine. Yeah. What I say now is like, I don't believe in it. People look at me and they're like, you don't believe in naturopathy? You don't believe in like alternative medicine? I'm like, no, because if there's evidence, I'll take it. I have nothing against green tea. Like, I use it daily. We made our own skincare. I put green tea in it. If it works, we take it. But more than that, it's like now, like if you can, there's always bad apples in every batch. There's going to be doctors that say, oh, don't ever do green tea. It's horrible. There's also going to be naturopaths that say, don't ever take any medication. It's horrible. No, to me, it's like, let's forget titles, forget, what you are, what you stand for. If it works and if it can help the patient, I'm all for it. So now I've switched to saying even like, go see. There's a bunch of naturopaths and chiropractors in my vicinity that I know are very science-based, and they can maybe help with, I don't know all of the plants and the medicinals, but as long as they're not going to contradict, like, we know, for example, certain types of juices, like grapefruit juice.
Yes.
So many medications can be actually turned off or turned on because it activates the same pathway, right? So again, we're not trying to sort of, go against nature. A lot of the medications, all of it comes from nature. I didn't go to Mars and make this pill. Like all of those chemicals, ingredients came from nature. We just tried to extract it as much as possible and put it in this. And then you guess what? Because it's from nature, it's going to interact with grapefruit juice or other things. So as long as the other allied healthcare team knows about this, and I'm very excited that a lot of them do. Like I sometimes see chiropractors, naturopaths, other people talking about the same stuff. I'm like, this is beautiful, because then I can give them this, you can give them these plants, you can talk about exercise, you can talk about sleep, you can talk about stress. Diet. Like there's so many people that say doctors didn't talk to me about diet. That's the number one thing I say. Yeah. Listen, don't forget medications, diet, sleep, exercise, and social interaction. If you're social, you're going to live longer. And that's what led me down to longevity is, beyond just being a dermatologist, is seeing that all these other extraneous factors can really contribute to your overall well-being. We know intermittent fasting, pretty much any autoimmune condition. It doesn't cure it. That's what people get wrong. And sometimes, when other people go off script as influencers, like, oh, no, buy my diet book. Forget what your doctor's saying. Just buy this. It'll cure you. I'm like, it's not. We have the studies. It'll help. It'll make it 30% better. In about 10% of patients, it will seem like it's curing them. But again, if you flare, you don't want to just be stuck in that path. I have to go down alternative pathway. I have to go down Western. No, we can find a nice river and flow between the two of them. And if you find a team that's allied and aligned, then I think you're going to have the best outcomes.
I would love, because for anybody listening to this, a dermatologist, a lot of people don't actually understand what it is. And I like breaking things down to the most simplest form.
Love that.
Because it just helps people, because people sometimes feel big words and dyslexia and there's so many other things, which I can go ADHD. There's so many different forms of people's understanding, and being able to break them down so that people can understand, and that gives them a better version to be able to connect with the conversation and with yourself. Could I kindly ask you to break down what a dermatologist actually does?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that. And most people get that completely opposite, because they think of dermatology, they think of just, vanity. They think of, okay, you're getting Botox, you're getting pimples. That's what most people, that's what they go for. And even in medical shows, Grey's Anatomy, they show it, oh, let's go to the dermatology wing where people are just relaxing and stuff. And initially in med school, that was sort of my idea too. When I was in first year, I didn't even look at dermatology. I was like, I want to be a surgeon. I really wanted to be an ENT surgeon. Something about it spoke to me. Like they went in, they did everything. You're digging out like all kinds of things. You're going all the way to the bone. You're taking out thyroids. You're getting, all kinds of cancers inside the mouth. It just was fascinating. And I had so many great mentors that were amazing in the first 2 years of my medical school that I really wanted to be. But I had two problems. I'm a night owl, not a morning person. Those people start at like 3 a.m. I'm like, I just can't. That was the reason I didn't go into rowing. I was, nationally ranked in terms of like my time on the 2,000 meters when I was in high school. And my coach was like, listen, you can go, you can get on the Olympics. I'm like, yeah, but you guys are on the water at 4 a.m. Like everybody's like, you can get a scholarship to do this if you just put more time in. I'm like, guys, I can't, and it was the same thing for surgery. I love that there's people out there that are morning people. We need surgeons like that. And then number two, I was too tall. So when you're an assist, and then the surgeon lays their bed to her or his level, I'm like screening, I'm like, guys, I'm not getting used to this. What's going on? They're like, no, you'll get used to it. I'm like, I'm actually getting really bad neck pain. And now it's chronic. I got arthritis in my neck at the ripe old age of 32. I just can't be a surgeon, And then a buddy of mine he was also a PhD, did a PhD, molecular immunology, just like myself. He was a year ahead, and he got into dermatology. I'm like, Mark, you got into derm? Like, what? I didn't even think of that. At first, I thought it was super competitive too. I'm like, I don't want to see pimples all day. And he's like, go to Vancouver. They have an admitting unit in Vancouver at UBC. see what dermatology is, and then let's talk. And I went there, and what you see, burn victims, burn units, people with blistering conditions, people with severe psoriasis that it's covering 100%, drug reactions that could literally kill you, something called Steven-Johnson syndrome that, 30% of the patients don't leave, and it's just a drug reaction. It's a severe allergic reaction, right? Skin cancer that appeared to me, my cutting side. I'm like, I could cut out skin cancers all day. And then also it's, to me, literally dermatology is one of the top 3 specialties that give the most toxic medications. People don't know that. So methotrexate, cyclosporin, cyclophosphamide for, like, if you have severe lupus, dermatology is going to be one of those specialties that are treating it. Now, it's not as glamorous, so nobody talks about it. Everybody talks about the sort of the cushy aspect of dermatology. But that's what spoke to me. I could do surgery, I could do very complex medications, and at the same time, I could make people feel and look better. Yeah. To me, it was like, wow, that's what appealed to me about dermatology. I could literally sort of do everything. And then on top of it, you see it. Like, you come into my office, there's 99% of the time, I'm like, that's what you have. They're like, how'd you know? I'm like, it's a language. Like, just like, if you're, reading book, how'd you know that so fast? I'm like, well, because you speak English. Like, for me, this is like, there's all these features and how they're combined. I mean, it took 5 years of just dermatology after medical school to get to that level. But like, to me, it's a language. And yes, I'm not going to know everything, but that's when I have a biopsy and I can take a sample. So I love that it's right there. And then I also love the fact that it can tell us about stuff. So if people have liver problems, they start getting yellow skin, they start getting, jaundiced, right? Their sclera, their eyes turned a little bit more yellow, or they start having bruising on their arms, right? If you have heart problems, you might start getting other things. Your vessels, are also going to be expressed in the skin. So they're like, why are my fingers all of a sudden white? I'm like, have you had maybe an echocardiogram? Because like those little lines in your fingers or lines in your nails, they could be like little emboli that your heart is pumping out, right? So it does. I love that it tells a story, and you can tell so much just by looking at a person. And then coming full circle, what got me into longevity is there's been some really cool research coming out first from mice, and then in humans, showing that there's these zombie cells that develop as we age. And if you have a lot of these zombie cells in your skin, they actually can leave your skin. They're called senescent cells. And they can start getting into your heart, into your lungs, and into your brain. So we know mice, for example, that have had a lot of UV damage, start running mazes slower. They have more dementia. They have heart problems. They have joint problems. And we've recently seen it. It's called the UK Biobank. So the United Kingdom is much better at actually collecting data and then having that data at disposal so they can actually do what we call registry studies. So we've also seen, looking at that people have had too much sun exposure also have more dementia, more heart disease, right? So again, it's for me, it's the ultimate longevity organ. I can see what's happening on the inside, but also if you don't take care of your skin, it's not just a vanity thing. You're also impacting your internal health. So that's kind of why I do both, is because they're both appealing to me. And now that I'm almost 50, I can start seeing my own mortality. So it's like, how do I preserve this? How do I remain, healthy and functional as long as possible?
You don't look 50, by the way.
Well, thank you. I work very hard at it.
I think after a while, I think when you get to a certain age, I don't think it's about the number anymore. I think it's more about your mindset and how you perceive the world and how it's helped to change you, because I know from doing research and just living life on the journey that it has brought me to. Every 7 years, they say that you change, you evolve. So the first 7 years will predict the next 7 years, the next 7 years will predict it. And it all depends on what you do in your life, how you change those patterns in your life, how you circle around, how's your mind thinking. So all these things actually come into play that helps you to become the person that you actually are in this present moment. So that all makes fundamental sense to me. So my next question, which you pretty much asked a little bit of it actually, was what skincare. There are so many people in the world that don't understand skincare, and like you say, there are so many people selling so many things in the world to them, which makes it so complicated to understand the true definition of the word skincare. You know, we can break it down and have a simpler form of it, and just looking after your skin, what you eat, how you eat it, like you say, exercise and so on and so forth. But from your wisdom, which I have so much gratitude of listening to, could you tell us more about skincare, more about how you perceive skincare? What can we do as individuals? Because we all have different skin types. You know, we all come from different places. How do we look after our skin from your perspective?
And I think you nailed it at the very end there. We're all different. We're going to have lots of different, I mean, it's connected. I mean, we all have similar diseases, like, you know, across populations and across cultures and skin types. We all have psoriasis. We all have acne. We all have eczema, but sometimes it can present differently, you know, because red on darker skin tones, a lot of people miss. It can look a lot more purple, or people say, well, I don't really see it as this post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. I'm like, no, that's inflammation. Right. So number one is what's really got me excited just in the last few years is we've really gotten some really cool new tools that can help us see below the surface of the skin. Because, you know, to me, I look at it almost like a wall, right? If it's got mold underneath it, if it's got termites, I can paint over it and make it look very pretty. Does that mean it's healthy? You know,
exactly.
And we don't know unless we have a way of looking. So just in the last few years, just in the last year alone, we've gotten these new tools that we can really see below the surface non-invasively. So we have tools like we've had it for a while, like high definition cameras with multispectral modalities where I can see the reds, I can see the browns, the damage, the actual true damage, where you can see how your collagen is doing underneath the skin just by doing a camera, all the way to seeing like things like sun damage as well. So now it allows us to see what's going on there, and more importantly, also track it, because visually you might be doing great. And that was a big wake up call for me, because I had my skin cancer. You know, I'm like, okay, well, it was all the damage I did when I was on the Adriatic. It's caught up to me. But is it truly, permanent? So what is it that we're talking about permanent? And what you find out, it's mitochondrial damage, like the DNA within the mitochondria gets damaged. There's also DNA CPD dimers that get damaged. And there's also the collagen elastin that has a specific look to it, the way it gets destroyed by the sun. And so I'm like, well, if we can see it, surely there's got to be a way for us to see if we can reverse that. Yeah. And the first one came from CO2 lasers, for example, back in I think 2005. There was the first study that sort of said, hey, we can fundamentally change the skin, from Dr. Fitzpatrick and his group. And what they showed was that we can decrease skin cancer by up to 90% of these individuals. And not only that, mechanistically and functionally and on histology, that skin now looks 30, 40 years younger, because if I take your skin, I can generally tell if I have some small demographics, or not even demographics. I can kind of tell by the concentration of melanin, the fibers density. I can kind of say, I think this person's in their 30s or 40s, and guess within about 2 to 3 years. What we now fundamentally have is we can actually track it we have something called True Life, Skin Life analytics that can actually track your mitochondrial DNA damage. So you can tell how much damage there was. And that was the surprising thing for me. Because after I got into dermatology, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to get certain lasers. I'm going to get skincare. I'm going to get vitamin C retinol. And visually, my skin looked amazing. And I still got a skin cancer. I'm like, well, how can that be? And then when I started testing, when I started doing this multispectral photography, when I did the Skin Life analytics, and I saw, oh my God, I'm in the top 90% of the amount of damage there is in my mitochondrial DNA and my regular DNA. Oof, I did nothing. So I just painted over top. And I did nothing, So to me, this is what we're sort of moving into in terms of dermatology. We're doing more and more validated stuff. And to me, what was really eye-opening is, skincare. How you brought it up. How do you know? How is this, one vitamin C from company A and company B, are they actually the same? It says the same thing, 10% vitamin C. And so we started working there's a company out of Paris called the PAOT test. It's the Institute of Antioxidant Sciences, run by Dr. Smale. And I was very fortunate to meet him. And I found out he initially started doing this stuff in wine. He's like, well, how do we know if this wine is going to be good? Is it going to oxidize? Is it going to be one of these wines that we can if I make it today, in 200 years, can I sell it as this like amazing wine? And what they found was if they could keep the antioxidant balance, so if it was very high level of antioxidants, that it would keep long. And so he developed a test that could say, hey, I could tell you the ratio of antioxidant, pro-oxidant species present, and it can give you the quality of the wine. Yeah. So my question was like, well, can we do this for the skin? And he's like, yeah, we did some initial testing and here's what we have. And I'm like, this would be an amazing way to validate different vitamin C's from different companies. Because in my mind, I'm like, how is it possible that certain companies are making vitamin C for like less than $10? I'm like, the raw materials, the raw materials cost more for quality stuff. How is it that you can do that? And so when we started testing, we're going to publish it. We just have the data. We got a poster published at AMWC for some of this research, which is one of the largest sort of aesthetic and dermatology conferences. Is we were able to see, this is why this one does not activate any cellular defenses. It doesn't neutralize anything in the skin. It might work maybe very superficially, but it doesn't do anything. So to answer your question, this is what we're moving towards. One, we know there's certain characteristics of different skin types. Darker skin is less prone to skin cancer, but they're more prone to pigmentation. Yes. They're less prone to aging, but they're more prone to sort of this chronic grumbling redness that looks like pigmentation. So now we can start understanding the processes by measuring it. Because to me, if you can measure it and see, hey, for you, guess what? Your antioxidant levels are way off, or your mitochondria is way off. It doesn't matter that you're targeting the melanocyte. It's a different cell. As soon as we clear it, and that's what we see in darker skin tones, we'll clear their melasma and they come back 2 months later, it's back. We used to say, well, it's just the sun. Well, now we're finding, no, it's this type of light too, incandescent lighting that can do it. Blue lights from the screen, blue lights even from the sun can do it. We're blocking maybe the wrong thing for you. So to me, it's really all about measuring. And unless we measure it, we don't know the outcome. And we just don't have that regulation now. People can claim anything they want. I could literally take this bottle, and people actually do this. So say this bottle has been actually proven to block, pigmentation generation. It's a true vitamin C. We know it antioxidizes, and it's 10%. I can literally take a drop of this, put it in just water, put 1 drop, and say, this is also 10% vitamin C. Why? Because in little small letters, and I don't even have to disclose it to the customers. I can have my own internal thing that said this was sourced from 10% vitamin C.
Okay.
There's no regulation, right? So SPF, there's high. Like when we were making our own sunscreen, it took us 2 years to get it approved because you have to show stability. You have to show that, okay, even under sort of, certain extreme conditions, it keeps its form. One of the testing is like the FDA, Health Canada are like, I need you to take this sunscreen, leave it for a year with a third party, and then they have to test the SPF at a third party, not you or your team. A third party has to test it and make sure that it's an S. When we say SPF 50, it's SPF 50. And that's not just anybody making a sunscreen. Vitamin C, you could literally make it today. And we're starting now to see for at least vitamin C was okay. Now we're starting to see peptides out of China where like 50% of them have been tested independently to be full of lead or even the wrong peptide. Why? There's no accountability. You can just say whatever you want, right? So that was my journey. Like having the skin cancer, that was my passion project. No. We need to develop tools. We need to bring tools to market. Even if I'm not the one making them, if I know somebody in Paris and somebody in London, somebody in Australia is making this, hey, let's put the megaphone on so people can have that, accountability.
That's you know what? It's so awesome to hear someone actually say that. Because I've never had someone hear or say like the responsibility of needing to change things in that way. And it's phenomenal to hear it because so many people, like we said, are going out there and, like you saying, buying cheap products that they think are going to help them, but it gives longevity damage on your skin, which also triggers so many different things. And we put it on our face and we think, oh no, it's helping. Like you say, it's just a facade for what you see on the front of your skin. But behind the skin, also behind the muscles, behind those things, it gets into your internal body also. It's not just your skin now, it's deeper than that. And even when I was doing my research on this, I found so many different people and things that I saw, and I'm like, wow, people are not really doing the research. Or I know in London people live fast lives, they want to do things very quickly, they need things yesterday, so it's true. So therefore they just want the quickest, fastest solution to just suppress or cover up what they need to, so they can go and feel, I don't know if it's an ego thing as well, where if you look good, and they say if you look good you feel good, but that's not true, because on the outside someone can tell you something and it may feel good for that period of time, but later on the full effects take effect, which I always say. So I'm so happy that you said that. So let's talk about the future of technology, because this plays a massive part, and I know that this is something that I hope you would love to talk about also. There are so many different types of technologies helping the future of medicine, helping the future of skincare, cancer. You spoke about kidneys also, kidney care and so on and so forth. Please tell me a little bit about technology and where you see technology helping science and the future of medicine.
I mean, it's really catching things early, you know, and not just early. We have scans now, like MRI scans, for example, that are there. People are doing it. Well, they'll sign up and say, okay, I want to catch things early, but we're still not quite there yet, where what do you do with that information? And part of the problem is we catch these things called incidentalomas.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard that term before, but it's a fancy way of saying just nothing, you know? So just like we have lumps and bumps on our skin, like moles or like little wrinkles or just cysts that can grow on our skin, you can have those same types of completely benign, harmless things that are growing in like your liver and your kidneys that are completely, there's no medical significance. Just like if you have a little cyst, you might hate the look of it, but it's not going to change your health. It's not going to impact anything. The problem runs though in with the MRI, especially like we're getting to better resolution, but most of the MRIs that are done there and a lot of longevity clinics don't have the resolution to tell you exactly what it is. So they'll say there's a lump there. And so then the question is then, well, what do you do with this? Do you watch it? Do you take it out? Do you biopsy it? And the problem nobody talks about is just the fact, just you biopsying your liver, like you got to, you know, it's a very vascular organ. People have died from liver biopsies. So, you know, so then like, imagine if you had like just a simple cyst here that did nothing, or you had like a little pimple and you removing it caused you to lose your life, you know? So that's always the conundrum, especially for somebody that's in longevity. I'm like, well, I don't want to give you or sell you something or recommend something that's potentially going to like also cause complications that we didn't know about, right? Or even if it's harmless, even if we say like, listen, it's a cyst, let's repeat it in like 6 months, come back, it's the same size. People are missing sleep. They're like, well, what if it's not? What if they made a misdiagnosis? Because people aren't perfect, humans aren't perfect, robots aren't perfect, machines are not perfect. So I think we have to understand the limitations. And I think it's, again, comes down to communication and saying like, look, we can do this test, but like, one, what's it going to tell us? Two, is there a risk factor? If you don't have any risk factors, all your grandparents, parents, everybody lived to age 102. Like, do you really need an MRI at 35 when you don't have any symptoms? And it might not be benign. We might find something, you know, just harmless, but kind of looks weird. And then now you're going down a whole rabbit hole that is going to be mentally exhausting at the very least, and potentially can have some side effects like scarring, keloid scarring, like, you know, So that there's so much great technology out there. I think we are getting to a point where we're able to tell and bring it on a personal level, like of, you know, certain mutations that are going to put you at a risk. But then it does make more sense. So if you have these mutations that you're more likely to maybe have, you know, liver cancer or kidney cancer, then maybe you should, you know, do the imaging and then maybe biopsies, because on the whole, it's probably going to be less risky. But and then you hear about like amazing breakthroughs, sadly, mostly in China. And that was one of the other things that I went through with my mom. She sadly passed away of leukemia in 2021. And it was leukemia from her breast cancer chemotherapy. So it was like, you know, the biggest irony ever. Like it was so sad. Like she beat, you know, we had the celebration in, you know, I think October 2020. 2019, October 2019, we had the celebration. She had 5 years, you know, breast cancer free. And then January 2020, January 2020, just before all this COVID nonsense came about, I just remember it vividly. It was the same, like I landed, me and my family landed, and my phone's just blowing up. And I thought it was because Kobe Bryant died. I'm like, my brother's texting me. He's like, dude, have you heard the news? Have you heard the news? I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm like at the airport. I'm like trying to get my stuff. Like, I'll call you in a second. And his news was mom was diagnosed with leukemia. He wasn't even thinking Kobe, but like it was just at the same, it was just this mental imprint that at the same time, I'm like, oh my gosh, and then just to go through that. And then we finally hit the final stages. She made it. She was only supposed to make it 4 weeks. She made it 14 months, so that we were blessed that we had some time with her. But at the end of that 14 months, we were faced with like, okay, there's nothing. We've reached the end of medicine. We don't have research. We don't have anything. And the sad part was there's so many like gene editing things that were out there, like stem cell, CAR T therapy, things that can actually go in and edit stuff that were very experimental. There was 50 clinical trials. One was in MD Anderson in Texas. One was in Frankfurt, Germany. 48 were in China. And so then it becomes this, the question of technology, it comes down to regulation. It comes down to our willingness as a society. What are we willing to accept? And right now, I sadly see it. We as the Western world are really lagging behind in terms of that experimental approach. Yeah. What are we doing to advance the society? We've really sort of taken a step back, because we're so litigious, because what makes me so sad is that we as a society have really fragmented ourselves. We're looking for differences instead of looking for reasons to unite each other and say, how do we advance society? How do we advance these techniques and ways to monitor and ways to detect cancers, things, the disease early, that we're so now bureaucratic because we're worried about what the other side is going to say or that they're going to sue us, that we're like just handcuffed to make progress. So that's my biggest worry, is not so much the technology. Yes, technology is coming. We might be able to, collaborate with other, eventually even with China, luckily they are very open to sort of collaborating. Yeah. But we have to bring that to our clinic. So even if it exists in the world, right now I'm telling patients, I'm like, listen, it's experimental. I don't know. I mean, imaging is one thing. If we say like, look, this can help. At least guide us, give us more answers. But when it comes down to truly new therapies that can help, we're just limited. Yes, you need the research. It's very, it's not ethical to not have research. But then when the bureaucracy is so high that it impedes it, it's also very frustrating. So I believe we really are at a crossroads of like, where do we go now as a society? Do we, keep being sort of the Wild West where we're innovators, we're the beacon of the world as the West? Or are we going to get surpassed by other emerging, countries that are now pushing and that want to innovate and want to? So how do you balance that without harming people? I honestly don't know, but it does, it does take a village. And I think we need to come down as a society and sort of say, hey, how do we get on the same page? How do we help others? How do we do this ethically? But we need to sort of advance things if we want to progress. And the right answer, I honestly don't know.
I don't think there's a right answer. I think it's opening doors and going through windows and finding loopholes. All these things are the main, the main way for us to evolve, having conversations, having communications, opening people's minds, perspectives, understanding, overstanding, I say also.
I like that.
Yeah, because I feel like understanding is you're going underneath something, whereas you're overstanding it. You're leaping over what needs to be done in order to make a change. And I think if we continue to do these things and we ourselves be that beacon of hope like we speak about, things will change. But regardless of gatekeepers, which we all know there are many in the world. Yes. There are many gatekeepers in the world, and it's sometimes gatekeepers are people who just don't want to lose the power that they have, because with that power they're able to manipulate or keep that gate closed because they know that they have the authority to be number one. And we understand that, but we also need to make them understand that change needs to be done, and we're here to make it. So keep doing
part of it is the language. I mean, the gatekeeper, you're right. It can have it's a double-edged sword, right? You need it because at the end of the day, the one thing that takes a big beating is like the FDA, or Health Canada or any sort of governing authority that are like, well, FDA this, the FDA that. I'm like, I mean, that's the most prominent one you see, but like, you need the highway safety, people. That to me, like, this is just the health safety people for FDA. Like, you need certain like FAA, flight and aviation, protocols that you need to stick by, right? Because yes, I mean, it'd be nice if your pilot just said, well, who cares about this? I'm just going to take a shortcut and I'm just going to fly, through. There's a reason we have rules, but you're right. Like, that doesn't mean we stick to those. If as the technology evolves, maybe we can say, hey, listen, our brakes are incredible. Our airbags are incredible. Why are we still doing 100 kilometers on the highway? Maybe we can increase that. So I think that you're right. There is that sort of, where people are just sort of happily oblivious to like, it is what it is. I don't want to leave well enough alone. Yep. But at the same time, you need rules, you need guidelines, but like, can we push the boundaries? I agree with you. And to me, that's the only way to progress. And the only way we're going to know is like understanding what the mechanisms are. And we see it, like, to me, that's also why I like the skin, because I can see it changing. And if somebody's like, well, I don't want that's the other thing we're seeing in my world is we're getting so many non-surgical options. Before we thought it was impossible. You need a facelift, for example. And I'm like, but do we? Well, what if we tighten your collagen? What if we biostimulate your elastin? What if we sort of resurface some of that damage and we get rid of zombie cells, which are actually signaling your fibroblasts to be quiet and not produce any elastin and collagen? So what if we target each of those a little bit? Like, no one tool is going to replace surgery, but what if we combine tools? What if we measure what's really, happening with you? Because we know now there's these things called 12 hallmarks of aging. We think we pretty much understand aging. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised that in the next 10 years, we're going to have the first ever 50-year-old Olympic gold medalist in like athletics or gymnastics, because we're starting to get there. There's some really cool science coming out of Germany, coming out of Korea, where we can actually regrow cartilage. We can, maybe start regrowing tendons and stuff. And that's the number one thing. Like, I can keep my muscles limber, I can keep my skin limber, but tendons and ligaments, that's what generally slows down older athletes. So I think we're on the cusp of figuring that out. And so again, it's not one thing. You have to, like you mentioned it yourself, you have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to exercise, you have to rest, you have to recover. But what if we understood those 12 hallmarks of aging? And I can see for you, for example, let's say factors number 2, 8, and 12 are out of balance, and we need to focus on that for you. Whereas for me, it's number 1, 3, and 7. And that's what I can focus on. But we're getting very, very close. I mean, if you look at things like GLP-1s, like Ozempic and Mounjaro, Wegovy, like those things, if you asked any doctor if this is possible 5-10 years ago, they'd be like, no way. I mean, we had like Saxenda, we had Contrave. They were okay for weight loss, but so side effects were severe. They only dropped weight by a little bit, but now to see like bariatric surgery type results with a pill that for many, many, many patients has very few side effects, or they're manageable. I mean, that doesn't mean there's no side effects. Everybody's different. But on the whole, like, people are doing better. And not just the weight loss. People are, their heart function's doing better. Their oxygen saturation is doing better. Their like diabetes is getting better. A lot of their autoimmune conditions are getting better. And we're seeing across the board, a vast majority number of cancers now being lower because being obese, carrying extra weight is by far your biggest risk in terms of longevity, And so the fact that we're now able to get away from that and we're able to, fix your metabolism, I think we're at such an exciting time in medicine, and I can't wait. And, if you fix the internal, guess what? You're just going to glow naturally as well. Your skin's going to even be more beautiful. And all the treatments that I do, from CO2 laser to biostimulatory fillers, are going to work better because your internal side is going to be healthier.
Yes, I agree with that one. And that's what it's also about. If your inner shines, your outer will shine as well. So I've only got literally 2 more questions for you. I can't believe how quickly the time even went. The time went so fast. So the one thing I do like talking about sometimes is judgment. And regardless if it's judgment in work, jobs, the way we look, the way we act. If I said to you, for example, what would you do differently in the world if the word judgment did not exist? So I'm going to take it out of the dictionary. It doesn't exist anymore. What do you believe that you would do differently in your life?
I honestly, like, full transparency, like, I think if you asked me this question maybe 5-10 years ago, I would have probably said I'd be much, more open and try things. But like, honestly, I've actually tried taking that word out. And I tell even my patients in my clinic, listen, there's no judgment. You're here. It's a safe space. Whatever you say here stays here.
Yes.
And I think we should try and live our lives that way too. So for me, like, I really do try and live my life that way, that there's no judgment, it is, because if it's really one of the biggest breaks you can have, if you feel somebody's judging you and you're not doing that particular activity because you're worried what somebody else is going to say, I'm like, listen, there's haters, no matter what you say. And I've actually seen it there was a little bit of that kind of coming back, because I've just only started doing my social media just recently, like maybe in the last 3-4 months, and initially when you go on, and that's what I was going to say, maybe actually, if you asked me 3 months ago, I'm like, oh, I'm worried what people are going to say. What am I doing? What am I wearing? How am I doing it? I mean, I think you do need a little bit of judgment, because it's that break of like, listen, there's society kind of like, I can't just go around completely without any clothes and say, I'm Adam from Adam and Eve, and like we didn't have any underwear back then, so I'm just going to do whatever I want. So I do think you need a little bit of that social connectedness, where you do realize you are accountable to other people.
Yes.
So I think some judgment is good, but if it blocks you from doing something that's positive, that's preventing you from achieving your goals, then I do think it's something that you need to consider and say, because initially, like, for Instagram, the comments are savage, but then I'm like, I could say anything. I could literally say, let's all get along. Let's forget, whatever race, culture, whatever. We're all human. We're just all together. And there'll be some comment, oh, you're blah, blah, blah. You're the worst human ever. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I literally try to be the nicest person ever. So I'm like, one, you can't think about the haters. So I think that's a better word. Just get rid of the haters. Like, do what you feel is right. Do what you feel is like truly like. To me, judgment is of, let's assume, there is a God and there is a heaven. At the end of the day, if I come before them and I have to be sort of judged and say, did you do everything you possibly could have? I'm like, you know what? I would not live my life. I would not live my life any other way. I tried my best. Like, this was truly a limitation. I tried to play basketball. I was not gifted enough, to be in the NBA. But you know what? I gave it my all. Like, I was during high school, I was in the gym like 8 to 10 hours a day. I was putting up, hundreds of shots. But so when people say like, are you sad that you didn't make the NBA? I'm like, no, I gave it my best. Like, that's as far as I could go based on my God-given ability. And so I think if we just push that of like, do the best you can with your God-given abilities, try to advance the world, try to make a world a better place for you, your kids, your just general humankind.
Yes.
Then yes, if that's what the word is stopping you from doing, then get rid of it or find a different word. But otherwise, try not to give yourself any limitations that others would impose on you.
That is very true. I agree with that absolutely and completely. I always say how I treat you is a reflection of myself, and how you treat me is a reflection of yourself. So go with that. And that will take you to where you need to go. And also when you talk about basketball as well, I always found that in life, your purpose will find you sometimes. So
I love that. but the stuff I learned from all that dedication I initially had to basketball, to judo. Judo was more my dad's thing. Eventually I'm like, listen, find out, are you doing this because it's your dad's thing? And I'm like, I did it. I'm like, but like, I'm like living your dreams, man. I kind of liked it, but not really. But like basketball, I'm like, I took that passion, because that never leaves. That's a transferable skill. So I'm like, listen, I know I can put, 10 hours a day, because I wanted to reach basketball. Now I can put it towards other things, right? I can put it towards splitting my time with, work-life balance. Oh my gosh, I have kids, 18, 16, 12. My biggest worry is like, am I, in a way letting them down? Am I spending too much time working that, they're going to go astray and I'm not going to be enough of a guide for them? So, thankfully, knock on wood, they seem to be going in the right paths. And we try and let them, not for me to judge them. I actually, judgment, a colleague of mine, Dr. Moon, really said something like, I'm very amazing about 3 years ago, and he talked about his daughter, wanting to go into medical school. He's also a doctor, and he had a epiphany with her where, she was like, I don't know if I want to, go to medical school. I'm at a crossroads. She met with guidance counselors. They gave her like 3 options: med school, I think firefighter and lawyer or something. She would be suited for all 3. And then he said, I thought she's not going to do med school. And then he's like, a year later, I saw her with the books, MCAT books. She's like, oh, I thought you gave up on medicine. She's like, no. I just wanted a choice.
Yes.
So that's the one thing I think, if I'm projecting judgment onto somebody, that's also not fair, and that's what we try to do with our children now is like, look, your journey is your journey. I love you said that too. And I fully agree. Your journey is your journey. But if that's your journey, I want you to aim to be the best at that, whatever it is, and one of my best friends, Ballant, that, from grade school, we still it's very rare, it's very rare to keep contact with, grade school people, especially if you leave, you leave the country, you leave the city. How do you stay in touch with them? But he was an artist. And I remember my parents being like, how, like an artist? And he was like very abstract art, like very abstract. They're like, well, how's he going to make a living with this? This is like, there's going to be like 3 people in the world that like this. And that's one of them is him. Aww. The second is his mom. And then a third is just some random person. I remember my dad saying, but he's done so well for himself. Why? Because again, this is why we were best friends and we continue to be. Is he has that passion to be the best at what he does. So even though it's different from what I do, he just has that, like, I want to be better. How do I get better? How do I do this? So he's been in the New Yorker, New York Times Magazine. I'm like, Ballant, you're also one of my inspirations, is that you keep going. And like, if I feel I stop, I'm sort of going to be, bringing back judgment. I'm going to be judged by you. I don't want to let you down in a way, or like my family members. So it's, sometimes it's good to have it, but I want it to be a positive. So I don't know if judgment is the best word, but I think, again, accountability. I just forget judgment. I want accountability, so that, what I stand for, what I do, I know there's other people keeping me accountable, so that I have to stay true to them.
See, that's the perfect way. And see, that's a perfect way to actually ask my last question to you in a way as well. So before I have the humbleness and gratitude to say thank you to you, I would love for people to be able to connect with you like I've had the pleasure of having this conversation with you today. Please do let us know how people can connect with you, learn or educate themselves more in understanding who you are, because it all starts with you, who you are, and how you can share it. Yeah, please.
Well, thank you so much, first of all, as well. I'm very humbled as well. Like this is definitely your calling. I mean, just the way you've made it so comfortable for me to present, who I am without truly without judgment. I am also very, very humbled. And for people, if they want to connect, if the story resonates, Instagram is probably the easiest. It's just my first name, last name, MD at Instagram.com.
Yes.
We try to keep it light. We try to keep others accountable. So whether it's, the medical field, or whether it's people that are on the other spectrum where they're just selling, snake oil and stuff, we really try and keep it as much as science-based. I try to keep it fun and educational. I don't know if it's going to resonate with everybody, but I do my best at it. And I'm learning every day too, how to sort of make it so that it's, educational, but authoritative, but also approachable. Those are kind of my 3 pillars. And I'm learning about it every day. I'm humble enough that, like, I know it's not perfect. Right. There's no millions of followers here, but I'm trying to, so that's how they can find me.
See, this is what I love. So, and I always find that sometimes in life, I find that you don't need to have millions of people behind you. It's about the quality, not the quantity, I've learned in life.
You're absolutely right there, and it's part of it is, most people say, like, are you an extrovert? Are you an introvert? I'm like, I can fake an extrovert very well at times, but at the core, I'd rather be with my core people, my wife, my kids, just watching the movies, and that's my happy place. But, you kind of learn, I mean, like, again, it's all about community, and you're right. It's finding, people that if they like what I'm saying, great. If I like what they're saying and we can make a little bit of a community, amazing. Let's chat about it. Let's try and advance. But, I always caution as well, is like, don't get into an echo chamber. Like, and that's one of the guiding principles of me too, is like, I'm always trying to check myself, fact check myself, is like, you don't want to create an echo chamber because you're just following something, and then it becomes a cult. I'm like, listen, no. If I made a mistake, I'm only human too. Let me know. And then I can revisit it. Maybe I can retest the science and we can sort of check some other articles, and then how do we make it fit in and stuff like that. But you're right, community is what guides us. The 5 blue zones across the world. If you look at, it's not the diet, it's not the exercise, it's not even what they eat, drink, or sleep. It's the fact that they have a social bond, So if we're looking at longevity, that social connectedness is so, so critical. And I think we've, as a society, lost a bit of that because of COVID, because of division, because of the way our world is going. I think we really need to find a way to connect again and just, separate everything else. And if the masses want to do whatever they want to do, if we can start with building a silo that people want to belong to, then I think maybe that's the way to do it. Or at least one of the ways.
I definitely agree with you. So this is where I say thank you so much again for coming on the Ask People podcast, for telling your story your way, but also connecting with the people and letting people understand who you are as an individual in the world and how you see things from your perspective. I have gratitude for you. I know the guests will have gratitude too for you. So from me to you, again, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you as much. And thank you also so much, Savia. It was really truly an honor and a privilege, and I feel blessed. And I hope you have an amazing day, and I can't wait to see it on the podcast.
Definitely.
And do stay in touch, please.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We're going to definitely do that.
Awesome.
We are definitely going to do that. So, guys, I want to thank you so much for listening to the Ask People podcast. And please remember, you can subscribe and leave us a review on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, or any other platform that you prefer listening to. Please also remember, you can connect with us and go all the way back to the first episode. You have over 300 episodes to listen to, but find an episode that resonates with you, can help you educate yourself, or just make you find some positivity, because we're all going through something in our lives that we need to hear something to bring us to the next level of who we are. And please remember, you can always listen to the Ask People podcast, where we release a new episode every Tuesday. You can go on the Savia Rocks website, or you can go on the Ask People podcast website and connect with us anytime. And this is from me. Please remember, thank you so much for listening again. Stay happy, stay positive, and as always, please continue to be kind to one another. Take care.
I'ma get deeper, tables are turning, world in reverse, political burning. Where is the love? Where is the hope? Where is the faith inside? It's been misplaced, power being misguided, manipulation used for both sides, unjustified violence. You living it up in your kingdom, where you're using the misguided ones to do your killing. You should be in front line, seeing the pain, taking the pain.
I love that. That was so good. Such a great sign off. No, honestly, thank you so much again. It was lovely. It was honestly a pleasure. Literally the hour went by. It was amazing.
I'm about to dive in deep. The wheels are spinning, globes in rewind, political ablaze. Where's compassion? Where's the love? Where's the love? Where's the love? Where's the love? How do you breathe and how do you sleep? I guess it's a lie you've been telling yourself. Get deeper, tables are turning, in reverse, political burning. Jesus said, the sins of your fathers, ripping through time, we living and breathing it. How could I breathe when I see people dying on both sides? We need to do better, shell shock, yeah, imagine that. Powers pretending they don't even have blood on their hands. Playing on both sides, you know what you did. Change the status quo, sins of your fathers, ripping through time, we living it, breathing it. Kings and queens, mass destruction, digging mass graves, driven by the greed. You don't really care, devil smile in my face. Your hidden agenda ain't really about peace. Your hidden agenda ain't really about love. How do you breathe and how do you sleep? I guess it's a lie you've been telling yourself. The lies we see through the darkness and the blurry lines. I'm about to dive in deep. The wheels are spinning, globes in rewind, political ablaze. Where's compassion? Where's the love?